The Imperial Guard's plasma rifles hummed to life the moment the human transport breached Valkyrie airspace without clearance. Commander Sethys watched the unidentified vessel descend through the violet clouds of the homeworld, her four eyes narrowing as tactical displays flooded her neural implant with threat assessments. No human ship had entered this system in 3 generations, not since the treaties that ended the border wars. The craft landed in the palace courtyard with deliberate precision, its hull scorched from atmospheric entry but intact. Sethys raised one clawed hand, holding her battalion in position as the loading ramp descended with a hiss of hydraulics. A human woman emerged first, her movements cautious but not afraid. She wore civilian clothing, a simple gray jacket over darker pants, and carried nothing but a small bag. Behind her came 2 children, a boy and a girl, perhaps 6 and 8 standard years old by human reckoning. They held the woman's hands tightly, their eyes wide as they stared at the assembled Valkyrie warriors. Sethys felt her chest plates tighten with confusion. This was no military delegation, no diplomatic envoy. This was something else entirely. "I need to see Queen Veala," the woman said in flawless Valkyrie, her accent carrying the precise tones of the northern mountain dialects. "It concerns her daughter." The words struck like a kinetic round. Princess Kayleen had been declared lost during a deep space exploration mission 4 years ago. The entire empire had mourned. The queen herself had refused to speak the princess's name since the memorial ceremonies. Sethys stepped forward, her hand moving to the ceremonial blade at her hip rather than the rifle slung across her back. Protocol demanded she detain these intruders immediately, but something in the woman's eyes stayed her hand. "The princess is dead," Sethys said carefully, watching for any sign of deception or threat. "Her ship was destroyed in the Kandor Nebula." "Her ship was damaged," the woman replied. "Not destroyed. She made it to Haven Station. She lived there for 2 years." Her voice caught slightly. "She was my wife." The courtyard fell silent except for the wind rustling through the crystalline trees that lined the palace walls. Sethys felt her secondary heart skip a rhythm. Marriage between humans and Valkyrie was not illegal exactly, but it was unprecedented. The biological incompatibilities alone made such unions purely symbolic, yet this woman spoke with the weight of truth, and the children beside her watched the exchange with unsettling intelligence. "Commander." One of her subordinates touched her shoulder, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Protocol requires... She studied the children more closely now. The girl had brown hair and human features, but something in the set of her eyes, the slight elongation of her fingers, seemed wrong. The boy was younger, his face rounder, but he watched the Valkyrie guards with an assessment too mature for his apparent age. "Where is the princess now?" The woman's composure cracked for the first time. "Gone. 3 months ago. Station illness. The medical facilities there couldn't..." She stopped, drew a breath. "Before she died, she made me promise to bring our children here. To let her mother know them." "Impossible," Sethys heard herself say, even as her tactical mind raced through the implications. "Humans and Valkyrie cannot produce offspring. The genetic structures are incompatible. Every xenobiology study confirms this." The girl spoke then, her voice clear and high. "Mama said we're different, that the doctors on Haven made it possible." She looked up at the woman, uncertainty crossing her small face. "She said grandmother would want to meet us, but everyone here looks angry." The child had spoken in Valkyrie as well, with the same mountain accent as the human woman. But more than that, her phrasing carried the formal cadence reserved for imperial bloodlines. Someone had taught her court speech, someone who knew the old ways. "Stand down," Sethys ordered her troops. She kept her own weapon ready but lowered. "I will escort them to the queen myself. Alert the palace guard. Tell them..." She paused, choosing her words with extreme care. "Tell them we have guests who claim blood connection to the throne. Let Her Majesty decide their fate." The walk through the palace corridors felt longer than any combat mission Sethys had ever undertaken. The children stayed close to their mother, but their eyes tracked everything with curiosity rather than fear. The boy reached out once to touch a wall mural depicting the ancient conquest of the northern continents, his fingers tracing the painted figures with gentle reverence. Guards stationed at every intersection stiffened as the strange procession passed, but Sethys' reputation kept them silent. Queen Veala received them in the small throne room, the private chamber reserved for family matters rather than state business. She sat alone on the raised dais, her ceremonial robes of deep purple cascading around her like liquid night. Age had not diminished her presence, If anything, grief had sharpened her into something harder and more terrible than the warrior queen who had unified the Valkyrie clans. Her eyes, all four of them, fixed on the human woman and children with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "Speak quickly," the queen said, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked her royal lineage. "Commander Sethis claims you bring news of my daughter. I have learned to recognize lies, human. Choose your words with great care." The woman stepped forward, her children still holding her hands. "Your Majesty, my name is Sarah Chen. 4 years ago, your daughter's research vessel was damaged in the Condor Nebula. She managed to reach Haven Station, where I worked as a hydroponics engineer. We became friends. Then more than friends." She paused, meeting the Queen's gaze without flinching. "She wanted to contact you, but communications were restricted due to the trade disputes. By the time the embargo lifted, she was too ill to travel. My daughter would never abandon her duties for sentiment," Vayala said, but something in her voice wavered. She understood her obligations to the throne. "She understood love," Sarah replied quietly, "both for me and for them." She gently pushed her children forward. "Your Majesty, these are your grandchildren. Kaelin wanted them to know their heritage. Wanted them to know you." The queen rose from her throne with a fluid grace that belied her age. She descended the dais steps slowly, each movement deliberate and controlled. Sethis tightened her grip on her blade, uncertain whether she was about to witness an embrace or an execution. The entire empire knew Queen Vayala's capacity for both mercy and ruthlessness. She stopped 3 paces from the children, towering over them even in her stooped posture. Her eyes moved across their faces, searching for something Sethis could not name. The silence stretched until the boy, with the fearless honesty of childhood, spoke into it. "You look like the pictures Mama showed us," he said in careful Valkyrie. "She said you were brave and strong. She said she missed you every day." The queen's legs buckled. She dropped to her knees so suddenly that Sethis nearly drew her weapon in alarm. Vayala's clawed hands reached out, trembling, to touch the boy's face with a gentleness Sethis had never witnessed in her queen. The girl moved closer, and Vayala pulled both children against her chest, her whole body beginning to shake. "Impossible," she whispered, the word barely audible. "How can this be? How can they exist?" Sarah knelt as well, bringing herself to eye level with the queen. "The geneticists on Haven developed a new technique, synthetic chromosome bridging. It's experimental, dangerous, but Kaelin insisted," she said. Sarah's voice broke. "She said she wanted to give you a reason to believe the universe could still surprise you, that it could still offer joy." "Show me," Vayala commanded, her voice suddenly sharp with authority despite the tears streaming from her eyes. "Prove they are hers. Complete DNA profiles. Medical records from conception through birth. Hollow recordings Kaelin made during her pregnancy." She held it out. "Everything you need to verify the truth. But, Your Majesty, please look at them. Really look. Your daughter lives in their faces, their voices, their spirits." The queen took the crystal with one hand while keeping the other around her grandchildren. She studied the girl's features first, noting the slight ridge above her brows that echoed Valkyrie bone structure. The boy's hands showed the beginning of the extra articulation in his fingers that marked royal bloodlines. Subtle things, human eyes might miss them, but Vayala saw them all. "What are your names?" she asked, her voice gentling again. "I'm Maya," the girl said. "This is my brother Kael. Mama named him after our birth mother. Kaelin chose human names for you?" "She wanted us to fit in at the station," young Kaelin explained with serious tone beyond his ears. "But she taught us Valkyrie, too. The old stories, the warrior codes, the songs of the mountain clans. She said we needed to know both parts of ourselves." Vayala closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against the children's heads in the traditional blessing of the Valkyrie people. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Sethis. "Commander, I want full genetic verification within the hour. I want the best xenobiologists in the Empire examining these medical records. I want to know everything about this synthetic chromosome technique." Her voice hardened. "And I want absolute secrecy until I decide how to proceed. These children's existence will shake the foundations of our society." "Yes, Your Majesty," Sethis replied, though her mind reeled with the implications. "Hybrid children, viable offspring from 2 species that should be genetically incompatible. If the technology existed, if it could be replicated, it changed everything about the Valkyrie understanding of their place in the galaxy." The queen stood, lifting young Kael with her as if he weighed nothing. Maya took her other hand naturally, and Sarah rose as well, maintaining her composure despite obvious exhaustion. "You will all remain in the palace as my guests," Vayala announced. "Under guard, for your protection as much as my security. Sarah Chen, You have my gratitude for honoring my daughter's wishes. Whatever else you may be, you gave her happiness in her final years. She gave me everything, Sarah said simply, including the privilege of raising these extraordinary children. The queen led them personally through the palace corridors, her guards scrambling to adjust to this unprecedented situation. Servants whispered as they passed, and Sethys could feel the rumor networks already activating. By morning, the entire palace would know something significant had occurred, even if the details remained obscured. They reached the royal family's private wing, chambers that had stood empty since Kaelin's presumed death. Veala opened the doors herself, revealing rooms preserved exactly as the princess had left them. Shelves lined with research materials and collected specimens from a dozen worlds. Star charts covering the walls. A simple sleeping platform with worn blankets. Maya gasped when she saw the room, pulling free from her grandmother's hand to run to a shelf holding crystalline formations. Mama showed us pictures of these. She said she collected them from the ice moons of Seradia. Her small hands reached for one, then hesitated, looking back for permission. You may touch whatever you wish, Veala said, her voice strained with emotion. This is your heritage as much as your mother's. She turned to Sarah. Was she happy? Truly? Yes, Sarah answered without hesitation. She missed her home, missed you desperately, but she built a life she loved. She worked with the station's research division, studied nebula formations, taught xenobiology to anyone who would listen. A sad smile crossed her face. She never stopped being a scientist or a princess. Just added wife and mother to her titles. My name is Adam. Adam said, these are my god letters, who scrolled out of your next project, and I cannot tell some different ways. That is, Adam said, these are many different factors as Hanan. Grandmother, he said, not looking up from the slate, was our birth mother really the greatest explorer in the Empire? Veala moved to stand beside him, looking down at her daughter's words preserved in digital amber. She was curious about everything, questioned everything, pushed every boundary she encountered. It made her a brilliant scientist. Her voice dropped. It also made her a difficult heir. I spent years trying to mold her into a proper queen, to teach her the value of tradition and protocol. I wasted so much time trying to change who she was. She told us you loved her even when you argued, Maya said, joining them at the desk. She said disagreement was how the Velkhari showed respect, that only enemies pretended to agree all the time. The queen's mandibles clicked in surprised amusement. She remembered that. I told her that when she was barely older than you after a particularly fierce debate about military spending. She looked at Sarah. What else did she tell them about me? Everything, Sarah said. Stories of your campaigns during the Unification Wars, how you personally led the assault on Fortress Kravar, the time you negotiated peace with the Tharnax Collective through a 3-day drinking contest because their culture respected strength over diplomacy. She paused. She wanted them to admire you the way she did. Veala sat down heavily in her daughter's chair, suddenly looking every one of her 70 standard years. I should have found a way to reach her. Should have sent ships to search when the official reports declared her lost. But I was angry, hurt that she had chosen exploration over her duties to the throne. I let my pride keep me from looking for her. Your Majesty, Sethi interrupted gently from the doorway. The geneticists are ready for the verification process. They request blood samples from the children, with your permission. The queen looked at her grandchildren, who watched the exchange with identical expressions of calm interest.
Will it hurt? She asked them directly, showing a consideration she rarely extended to anyone.
Just a little prick, Kale said with the confidence of a child who had undergone medical procedures before. We've had lots of tests. The doctors on Haven wanted to make sure we stayed healthy. Were there complications? Veala asked Sarah, new worry entering her voice. Are they well? They're incredibly healthy, Sarah assured her. The synthetic chromosomes stabilized perfectly. Their immune systems are actually stronger than either pure human or Velkhari children. The geneticists theorized that hybrid vigor might apply, but we couldn't be certain without more subjects. Kaelin was the only Velkhari on Haven Station willing to attempt the procedure. The risks were significant. She always believed the universe rewarded the bold, Veala said softly. She stood, her composure rebuilding itself like armor. We will proceed with verification, but the children remain in my sight throughout the process. If this is some elaborate deception, if someone dares to use my grief as a weapon, I will respond with extreme prejudice. The threat hung in the air, tangible and cold. Sarah met it without flinching. I understand. If I were in your position, I would be equally cautious. All I ask is that you judge fairly once you have the evidence. The medical facility attached to the royal wing looked more like a luxury spa than a hospital. All soft lighting and natural materials designed to comfort rather than intimidate. The geneticist who supervised the testing was an elderly Valkyrie male named Torvin, his scales dulled with age but his eyes sharp with intelligence. He treated the children with surprising gentleness, explaining each step of the process in simple terms. This will analyze your genetic markers, he said, pressing the sampler against Maya's finger. The device beeped once, drawing a microscopic blood sample. It compares your DNA to the royal family database to identify inherited traits. Like a very precise family tree mapper. Will it show we're related to grandmother? Maya asked, using the Valkyrie term for paternal grandmother with perfect inflection. Torvan glanced at Veala, who nodded slightly. If you are who your mother claims, yes. It will show genetic connections that cannot be faked or manufactured. He moved to Kale, repeating the procedure. All done. Results will process in approximately 20 minutes. The wait felt eternal. Veala sat with the children on a comfortable couch, listening as they told her about life on Haven Station, about the hydroponic gardens where Sarah worked, about their school lessons taught by automated systems and visiting traders, about Kalian's last days, when illness had forced her to record messages for them to watch after she was gone. She made us promise to be brave, Kale said quietly. Said that royal blood meant serving others, protecting the weak, seeking knowledge to benefit everyone. She said if we ever felt scared or alone, we should remember that we came from a line of warriors and explorers who never surrendered to fear. Veala's chest plates shuddered with the effort of containing her emotions. That sounds exactly like something Kaelin would say. She believed nobility was about responsibility, not privilege. She looked at Sarah. You taught them well. They speak like courtiers, understand nuance and formality. That requires patience and dedication. Kaelin left detailed instructions, Sarah admitted. Hollow recordings of proper address, etiquette, cultural context. She started teaching them while she was pregnant, determined that they would know their Valkyrie heritage even if they never saw the homeworld. Her voice wavered. She hoped you might accept them one day, but she wasn't certain. The laws regarding succession, the purity standards, she knew how complicated this would be. Before Veala could respond, Torven approached with a data tablet, his expression carefully neutral. Your Majesty, the results are conclusive. He handed her the device, and Sethes watched her queen's eyes move across the screen, reading data that would reshape the Empire. Explain it to me simply, Veala commanded, though her hands trembled slightly holding the tablet. The children share genetic markers with Princess Kaelin that can only come from direct parentage, Torven said carefully. They carry royal bloodline indicators going back 7 generations. They also possess human genetic structures from Sarah Chen. The synthetic chromosomes are unlike anything in our medical databases, but they function perfectly, allowing both genetic sets to coexist without rejection or degradation. He paused. Your Majesty, these children are impossible by every established scientific principle. Yet they exist, healthy and viable. They are your daughter's legacy and your rightful heirs by blood. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children seemed to sense the magnitude of the moment, sitting quietly as their grandmother processed information that challenged the fundamental understanding of Valkyrie biology and society. Sethes found herself holding her breath, waiting for the queen's response. Finally, Veala set down the tablet and looked directly at Maya and Kale. You are my blood, she said, the words carrying the weight of formal proclamation. You are the children of my daughter, grandchildren of the throne, inheritors of the warrior clans. This truth is now established beyond any doubt. She stood, and everyone in the room instinctively came to attention. But this truth is also dangerous. There are those in the Empire who will see your existence as either a miracle or an abomination. Some will welcome you as the future. Others will demand your deaths to preserve genetic purity. What will you do, Your Majesty? Sarah asked, moving closer to her children protectively. Veala's expression hardened into something ancient and implacable. I will protect them with every resource at my command. I will present them to the council and the clans. I will dare anyone to challenge my acknowledgement of them as rightful heirs. Her voice rose slightly, power resonating through the room. And I will honor my daughter's final wish by ensuring her children know they are loved, valued, and part of this family. She knelt again, bringing herself down to the children's level one more time. Maya. Gale. You are about to enter a world that will not understand you. People will question your right to exist, your place in Valkyrie society, your claim to royal status. It will be difficult and sometimes frightening. But I swear on your mother's memory that you will never face these challenges alone. Maya, with the seriousness of her 8 years, reached out and took her grandmother's larger hand. Mama said you were the strongest person she ever knew, that you never backed down from anything, even when everyone said you couldn't win. Her voice grew firmer. We're not scared, grandmother. We're Valkyrie. We don't surrender to fear. Veala pulled both children into an embrace that spoke of all the years of grief and loneliness finally finding purpose again. Sethis watched her unshakable queen weep openly, not in sorrow this time, but in fierce, protective love for these impossible grandchildren who carried her daughter's legacy forward into an uncertain future. The commander understood then that everything had changed. The Empire would transform, had to transform, to accommodate these hybrid children who should not exist but did. And Queen Veala would remake the entire Valkyrie civilization before she would allow anyone to harm them. The announcement came 3 days later after careful preparation and strategic discussions with key council members. Veala stood in the grand hall before the assembled leadership of the Empire, her grandchildren on either side of her wearing formal robes modified for their smaller stature. Sarah stood slightly behind them, her presence a clear statement that the human woman was now part of the royal household. I present to you Maya and Kale, children of my daughter Princess Kalian and her human spouse Sarah Chen, Veala announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Genetic verification confirms their heritage. They are my acknowledged heirs, with all rights and privileges that status entails. Some council members bowed in acceptance, recognizing the political reality that the Queen's word was law. Others stood in shocked silence, their mandibles clicking in agitation. A few stepped forward in open challenge, their scales flaring with aggressive coloration. Councillor Drevkos, leader of the Traditionalist faction, raised his voice in formal protest. Your Majesty, with respect, this is unprecedented. Hybrid children have no standing in our succession laws. To grant them royal status destabilizes centuries of tradition. Tradition serves the people, Veala replied coldly. When tradition becomes a cage that prevents adaptation and growth, it must change. These children exist. They carry royal blood. No law explicitly forbids their recognition because no one imagined such a possibility. She gestured to Torvin, who stood ready with his research. Our own geneticists confirm they are viable, healthy, and capable of continuing the bloodline. What logical argument denies them their birthright? Logic has nothing to do with it, Drevkaz argued. This is about maintaining Valkyrie purity, about preserving our identity as a species. If we accept hybrids into the royal line, what message does that send to our people? Young Kyle stepped forward before anyone could stop him, his small voice cutting through the tension. It sends the message that the Valkyrie value truth over comfort, that you're brave enough to face new realities instead of hiding behind old fears. He looked directly at Drevkos. My birth mother taught me that real strength means protecting those who are different, not destroying them because they make you uncomfortable. The hall erupted in competing voices, some praising the child's courage, others condemning his presumption. Veala raised her hand for silence, and the room obeyed instantly. My grandson speaks wisdom beyond his years. We have a choice before us. We can embrace this new possibility, study it, learn from it, and potentially offer our people options they have never had. Or we can reject it out of fear and ignorance, proving that the Valkyrie have become rigid and weak. And if we embrace it, asked Councillor Sivara, a moderate who had supported many of Veala's reforms, what precedent does this establish? Will we see widespread hybridization? Will our species lose its identity? We will establish guidelines, Veala responded. The synthetic chromosome technique is complex, expensive, and still experimental. It will not become commonplace overnight. But I will fund continued research into genetic compatibility, into the possibilities of peaceful integration with other species. Her gaze swept the chamber. The border wars taught us that isolation and suspicion lead only to bloodshed. My daughter believed the universe had room for cooperation and synthesis. Her children are living proof of that belief. Maya spoke up then, her voice clearer and stronger than her brother's. We don't want to replace anyone or change who the Valkyrie are. We just want the chance to honor both sides of our heritage. To be a bridge instead of a threat. Sethis watched the council members process this, saw calculation replacing panic in many expressions. These children were articulate, intelligent, and already trained in courtly speech. They would make formidable royals if given the opportunity. And their existence opened doors to alliances and possibilities the Empire had never considered. The debate continued for hours, but Veala had chosen her moment well. By presenting the children directly, allowing the council to see them as individuals rather than abstract threats, she had shifted the emotional calculus. One by one, members pledged their support or at least their willingness to withhold opposition. Drevgoz and his traditionalists remained unmoved, but they were outnumbered. "This matter is not settled," Drevgoz warned, as the session concluded. "There will be challenges, legal and otherwise. Your Majesty may have the power to acknowledge these children, but you cannot force the Empire to accept them." "I don't need to force anything," Veala replied with dangerous calm. "I simply need to give my people the chance to know Maya and Kale as I do." Truth has a way of winning arguments that force never could. She placed her hands on her grandchildren's shoulders. "We have time, we have patience, and we have right on our side." The following weeks tested that confidence. Protests erupted in some cities, with traditionalists demanding the hybrid children be removed from the succession. Counter-protests emerged as younger Velkhari, particularly those who had worked or studied alongside humans, defended the children's right to exist within royal society. The Empire polarized, debates raging in every public forum about genetic purity, tradition versus progress, and the nature of Velkhari identity. Through it all, Maya and Kale continued their education under Veala's direct supervision. The Queen taught them personally, sharing knowledge of statecraft, military history, and the complex web of clan politics that held the Empire together. Sarah worked with the palace tutors to ensure they maintained their human heritage as well, balancing both cultures with careful attention. Sethis found herself serving as an unofficial bodyguard to the children, a role she had neither requested nor expected. But watching them navigate the hostile environment with grace and intelligence had won her respect. They were good children, she thought, whose only crime was existing in a universe that had not prepared for them. One evening, as she stood watch outside the children's chambers, young Kale emerged and sat beside her. "Commander Sethis," he said in formal Velkhari, "may I ask you a question?" "You may," she replied, keeping her eyes on the corridor while giving him her attention. "Do you think we'll ever really belong here, or will we always be outsiders?" The question's weight surprised her. She looked down at the boy, seeing the worry behind his composed expression. "I think," she said carefully, "that belonging is not given, but earned. Your grandmother belongs because she proved herself in battle and governance. You will belong when you prove yourselves in whatever challenges you face." "That's what I thought," Kale said quietly. "Mama Kalen's recording said the same thing. That royal blood just gets you through the door. What you do once you're inside determines whether you stay." Sethis felt her respect for the dead princess grow. She had left her children not just with genetic heritage, but with wisdom to navigate the difficult path ahead. "Your birth mother was correct. Keep honoring her teachings and you will find your place." Maya joined them then, having overheard the conversation. "Commander, some of the servants won't talk to us. They act like we're invisible or contaminated. How do we make them see us as people and not as problems?" "You can't," Sethis said bluntly. "Some people will never accept you regardless of your actions or character. But you don't need everyone's acceptance. You need the respect of those who matter, and the strength to ignore those who don't." She gestured to the palace around them. "Your grandmother has that strength. Learn from her example." The children absorbed this lesson in silence, and Sethis felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness toward them. They were just children, caught in circumstances beyond their control, trying to navigate a world that saw them as either miracles or mistakes. Whatever else they might become, they deserved the chance to grow up safe and supported. The turning point came 6 weeks after their arrival, during the Festival of Ascendance that celebrated the founding of the Velkhari Empire. Traditionally, the royal family presided over ceremonies honoring warriors who had distinguished themselves in service to the throne. This year, Veala made an unprecedented decision. She brought Maya and Kale to the public ceremonies, presenting them formally to the Velkhari people for the first time. The crowd's reaction split along predictable lines. Cheers and jeers competed for dominance as the queen led her grandchildren onto the ceremonial platform. Sethis and her guard maintained tight security, scanning for threats among the thousands gathered in the capital square. The atmosphere felt explosive, one wrong move away from violence. Veala raised her hands for silence, and the crowd gradually obeyed. "My people," she began, Her voice amplified across the square. Today we honor those who serve the Empire with courage and dedication. But before we proceed with the ceremonies, I wish to speak about courage of a different kind. The courage to accept change. The courage to question assumptions. The courage to embrace possibilities that frighten us. She brought Maya and Kale forward to stand beside her at the platform's edge. These children are my blood, descendants of the warrior clans, inheritors of the legacy that built our civilization. They are also human, carrying the heritage of a species we have fought and feared. They should not exist according to our old understanding. Yet they do exist, healthy and whole, proof that the universe contains more potential than our limited imaginations conceived. Vayala continued, her voice strengthening. I did not ask you to abandon your traditions or forget your history. I ask you to consider whether our traditions serve our future or simply comfort our present. These children represent a bridge between species, a possibility for cooperation that transcends old hatreds. They are not a threat to Valkyrie identity, they are an expansion of it. Pretty words, someone shouted from the crowd. But what happens to our bloodlines if hybrids are accepted? What happens to our species? Before Vayala could respond, Maya stepped forward, her young voice somehow carrying across the square. Nothing happens to you that you don't choose. My brother and I existing doesn't change who you are or what you value. We're not trying to replace anyone. We're just trying to live our lives and honor both parts of our heritage. She paused, gathering courage. Our birth mother loved the Valkyrie people. She gave us that love, taught us your language and customs, wanted us to understand your strength and wisdom. But she also loved humanity, loved the woman who raised us, wanted us to value compassion and diversity. Why should loving both be wrong? The crowd fell silent, confronted with the simple honesty of a child's question. Kale spoke next, his voice trembling slightly but determined. We didn't ask to be born this way. We didn't ask to become a political issue. We just want the chance to grow up and serve the Empire like our birth mother did. Is that really so terrible? Sethi saw it then, the shift in the crowd's mood. They had come prepared to see monsters or symbols. Instead, they saw children, vulnerable and earnest, asking for basic acceptance. Not everyone would be swayed, the hardliners never would be, but doubt crept into expression, softening anger into uncertainty. An elderly Valkyrie female pushed through the crowd, her scales marked with the scars of old battles. She climbed onto the platform with the authority of a decorated veteran, and Sethys recognized her as General Krisha, hero of the Thornax campaigns. The general studied the children carefully before speaking. I fought beside Princess Kaelin during the border skirmishes before she took up exploration, Krisha announced. She was the bravest warrior I ever knew, human or Valkyrie. She questioned everything, drove me half mad with her constant challenges to military doctrine, but she saved my life twice and the lives of countless others with her unconventional thinking. The general's eyes locked on Vayala. If she chose to create these children, if she believed they were possible and valuable, then I will honor her judgment. The princess never made decisions lightly. The endorsement from such a respected figure rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Other veterans began to voice their support, remembering Kalian's service and willing to extend faith to her children. The tide turned slowly but inexorably, until even the protesters fell silent, their arguments losing momentum against the weight of accumulated testimony. Vayala placed her hands on her grandchildren's shoulders, her expression fierce with pride. The Valkyrie have always been survivors, adapters, warriors who learn from every challenge and emerge stronger. These children are our next challenge and our next opportunity. I charge you all to meet them with the courage that defines our people. Give them the chance to prove themselves. That is all any of us can ask. The ceremony continued, but everything had changed. Maya and Kale stood beside their grandmother throughout the proceedings, small but no longer invisible. The Valkyrie people had seen them now, heard them speak in their own voices, and the abstraction had become reality. Acceptance would not come overnight, but the possibility had been established. That night, in the privacy of the royal chambers, Vayala allowed herself to fully embrace her role as grandmother rather than queen. She sat with Maya and Kale while Sarah watched from a comfortable chair nearby, all of them exhausted but relieved. You are both magnificent today, Vayala said, her formal bearing softening. I know public speaking is frightening at your age. You showed courage that would honor any warrior. I was terrified, Maya admitted. My hands were shaking so hard I thought everyone could see. Real courage is acting despite fear, not the absence of fear, the queen replied. She reached into her robes and withdrew 2 small objects, placing them in the children's hands. They were military medals, ancient and worn, from Veala's own campaigns. These belonged to me when I was not much older than you, fighting to unite the clans. I want you to have them now, as reminders that every warrior starts uncertain and grows into their strength. Cale traced the engraved symbols on his medal reverently. Grandmother, will people always hate us for being different? But some will admire you for it. Focus on the latter and never let the former determine your worth. She looked at Sarah. Your mother, Sarah, has been remarkably patient through all this upheaval. Has anyone asked her what she wants? I want my children safe and happy. Everything else is secondary. Then you shall have it, Veala declared. I am establishing you as a member of the royal household with all appropriate privileges. You will advise on matters regarding the children's human heritage and serve as a bridge between our cultures, if you're willing. I'm willing, Sarah said softly. Kaelin asked me to do this, to make sure our children knew both worlds. I'll honor that promise however I can. The Queen nodded, satisfied. Then we face the future together, all of us. A very strange family by anyone's measure, but a family nonetheless. She drew the children close again, marveling at how quickly they had become essential to her existence. 3 months ago, she had been a grieving mother with nothing but memories. Now she had grandchildren who challenged her, delighted her, and gave her purpose beyond mere governance. Maya yawned, exhaustion finally overwhelming excitement. Grandmother, will you tell us about the Battle of Kravar? You never finished the story last time. It's late, Veala protested, though without conviction. Please, Cale added. We promise we'll go straight to sleep after. The Queen laughed, a sound that startled Sethys, who stood guard outside the door. The commander could not remember the last time she had heard such genuine warmth from her monarch. Very well, but then bed immediately, understood? As Veala began the tale, her voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of traditional storytelling, Sarah caught Sethys's eye through the doorway. The two mothers shared a look of understanding, both amazed by how dramatically their lives had changed and both fiercely committed to protecting the children who had brought such unexpected light into the darkness. The Empire would continue to struggle with the implications of Maya and Cale's existence. Laws would need revision, attitudes would shift slowly, and challenges would emerge from unexpected quarters. But in that moment, watching the most powerful leader in the Velkhari Empire tell stories to her hybrid grandchildren, while their human mother looked on with love, Sethys understood that some battles were already won. The children had claimed their place not through force or law, but through the simple power of their existence and the fierce love of those who recognized their worth. The future remained uncertain, but it was a future these impossible children would help shape. And that, Sethys thought, was exactly the kind of legacy Princess Kaeleen would have wanted. A universe transformed not by war or diplomacy, but by the radical act of love crossing boundaries others thought absolute. The alien queen had fallen to her knees when she learned her grandchildren were human-born, but she had risen again stronger, more purposeful, ready to defend their right to exist against anyone foolish enough to challenge her. That, more than any genetic test or legal precedent, was what would ensure Maya and Cale's place in the Empire. They had a grandmother who would move worlds to protect them, and in the Velkhari culture there was no greater guarantee of survival than the unwavering commitment of a warrior queen.